Welcome back, folks. As you can see, we're here today with the front bucket seat frame for the 51 Ford. We're going to work on some upholstery. Now, I've already got my rear seat completely finished, completely reupholstered, and it came out pretty good. This is the original cloth base for the seat, and it's in complete shambles. There's really not much to it. It's just some padding, very thin padding, and then the cloth top. We're gonna put a little bit more behind this, make it kind of nice to sit down on, because we are going to be driving this thing for a little bit, taking it to shows and whatnot, so we need to get it looking good. This is effectively 3 different pieces. You have the base spring, and then you have individual passenger side and the driver's side. So I'm going to need to disassemble this and get it broke down into 3 separate pieces. We're going to have to come down here and take some of this stuff off. I'm going to have to get this repainted, and then we can start putting the foam on, burlap, you know, just different things. But we need to rejuvenate these springs for sure. All right, now that we've got this taken apart, the goal is to remove as much of this padding and just excess stuff. There's going to be extra hog rings and everything on here, so I need to get rid of as much of this stuff as I possibly can, clean it up. I'm going to want to paint the frame for sure, but we also need to get it rejuvenated. I mean, it's not bad, but you know, it hasn't seen any action really in probably 30 or 40 years, so I need to go ahead and get it lubricated. That'll keep the noise down a little bit, and yeah, then we could start putting the foam, the burlap, the foam, and ultimately the upholstery. Now that I have the vast majority of the big stuff taken care of, I've got a bunch of these little pieces left. It's just hard to get to and pick through. It's very tedious. So what I came up with, instead of doing this all day long for hours on end, and I'm going to hit this all with a propane torch, and that should catch everything on fire for the most part. I'll let it smolder, and then I'll come back with an air hose, and that should get just about everything. We're going to need to clean this up. It's all rusted. I bet you this car was underwater at some point, would be my guess. I need to come in here and get as much of this rust off as I possibly can, and then we can go ahead and primer and paint it. Now that actually came out pretty good using that propane torch. I got most everything off. It's not 100% effective, but it sure beats sitting there for hours on end picking that stuff out by hand. So now I need to get in here. I'm going to use a drill and a wire brush and just try to get in the nooks and crannies of everywhere that I possibly can. Try to get as much of this rust and dirt and stuff out as possible. And then any of these heavy spots, might come back and hit it with an actual wire wheel on the grinder. I just call this good. Got the majority of the rust off of there, all the particles off of there. So now we're going to go ahead and primer everything. I'm not going to worry about the springs, just going to paint the frame, and then we'll come back and we'll paint the frame itself black. I have this lever here, and I want this to stand out just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this hammered silver. With the frame painted all black and finished, it's nice and dry and everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the springs and everything with just a light coat of WD-40, and hopefully that'll, you know, just kind of rejuvenate the springs a little bit, kind of bring everything back to life, because like I said, this stuff hasn't been used, hasn't been lubricated, hasn't been anything. It's been sitting in a barn with rodents going through it, building nests and all that stuff. So just going to soak this down pretty good with a light coat of WD-40 and just help rejuvenate it just a little bit. And while that dries, we need to come over here. We're going to get these side pieces, these trim pieces, kind of cleaned up. You can see there's some rust down here towards the bottom, a little bit up top. So I need to get the wire wheel and grind some of this stuff off pretty good, and then we can hit it with some primer. This side's not so bad, but hit it with some primer and then paint it same color black. Next step is burlap. Now I've already got mine cut out, but effectively all you're going to do is just lay it over and trace the form that you want and cut it out to fit. And what you want really is for it to overhang about a 1/2 inch, 1 inch, just depends on what you want. If you want to double it up, I'm going to double some of these areas over and take some hog rings, and then we're going to attach it directly to the frame. And this burlap is going to act as a substrate for the foam and the glue to combine all this together and keep the foam down. I'm going to start basically in the middle here. I'm going to kind of double this over, and then we're going to attach the hog ring directly to the frame, attaching the burlap like so. The burlap is finished. That looks pretty good. It's nice and tight. There's a couple areas that aren't exactly perfect, but it'll be okay. This doesn't really need to be absolutely perfect. So the next step, I've got this foam here. It's 2-inch padding that I got from the local hobby store. I'll go ahead and take this and drape this over, and then I'm going to trace out a pattern that I want to cut it. And I think what I'm going to do, since your legs hang off the front here, I want to go ahead and wrap this around. Now I've got this marked out for the most part, and now I'm ready to cut it. And I'm going to use this electric, I guess it's like a turkey knife. It works really good for foam and just different soft things. So I'm going to use this to go ahead and cut the foam. Now on the back side I have this bracket that I need to cut out for, so I've got it marked. Now that we have the foam measured out and cut, it's time to apply the adhesive, and it's just this Loctite spray adhesive. This actually works pretty good, so I'm just going to spray it on here, get a nice coat, let it sit for a few minutes so it can tack up, and then we'll apply the foam. All right, with the foam down, we can go ahead and start in the back. And I'm going to use these big 3/4 inch hog rings for this foam. I'm just going to find a good spot and tuck it down and get it clamped. So I've got this seat flipped over with the foam on bottom, and I don't have enough width in the foam to get where I wanted to. I wanted to get up here because there's a good place to put a hog ring. So what I'm going to have to do instead is just tuck it under and then get back here and clamp it to these springs back here. Shouldn't be a big deal. It's still going to wrap around really nice. That is the foam part. I would say that that's probably the most difficult part of the whole process. Just making sure that everything gets to where you want it to be, nice and tucked in. So now it's time for the upholstery. All right, with the bench seat here, ready to go ahead and put on this cover. And as you can see, this is just like a glorified pad. There's a little bit of padding, I'd say about 3/16 of an inch padding. And then it's just elastic skirt, but it looks good and it should fit good too. So we're gonna go ahead and slip this on real quick, see how well it fits. So it slipped on really easy, but I gotta show you something that I just noticed. We have this bracket back here, and that's where our backrests are going to hook into, and there's no cutout for it. I guess we can just tuck it down and see how that works. But it lines up pretty good. Lines up on the side pretty good. We can probably get this elastic pulled up underneath. That should be all right. But it does look pretty good. Looks like it fits pretty tight all the way around. But this gives us plenty of room to pull what we need in front. So I'm going to start in the back and get that hooked up underneath, and then we'll pull what we need into the front. Got all the elastic loops and everything pulled nice and tight, so this fits as good as it's going to, but it looks pretty good. It came together pretty well. It fits really nice. I'm kind of surprised. I didn't expect them to nail it. The only thing that I don't really like is that there's no notch for that bracket, and it's kind of wonky right there, and I'm certainly not going to cut this fabric, so we just tucked it there. It's going to have to do. I think it'll work just fine. And then in the front here, you know, we've got those trim pieces that I've painted that'll go on, so it'll block most of this anyway. I think it'll come out to here and wrap all the way around and block all that out. So yeah, turned out pretty good. I need to get all this stuff ironed up real quick, and then I've still got one more backrest to do, and then we'll assemble this whole thing. All right, I've got the iron out, and you can see the difference. With just a little bit of heat, it pulls those wrinkles out pretty good. I've got one of the backrests halfway finished. I've got the burlap on. And as you can see, here's the original insert. This seems to be just like a particle board or cardboard or something of the such. And I just recreated it with like a really light plywood, almost like a balsa wood. I'm gonna go ahead and get this installed on the back. There's a little tab here that'll hold it in at the bottom, and then at the top It appears to be just connected with, held on with baling wire. We're gonna go ahead and get this insert installed, and we can flip this over and put the foam on. Well, we got one of the backrests finished. It came out pretty good. You can see it's still got some wrinkles and stuff in it, but you can get that out. We got a little bit of dirt on here, but that came out pretty good. I ran out of glue, so I got some of that on order. Should be here tomorrow. We can get the other backrest done. Well, after a solid weekend and a bit of elbow grease, this is the final result. And I think it came out pretty good. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most difficult, I would say this is probably a 3. And like I said, this is more of a do-it-yourself project, something you could do over a weekend and not break your budget. I think all in, with the hog rings, to the paint, to the foam, and the fabric itself, this cost me less than $350 to do, versus what I was quoted at some of the upholstery places, upwards of $1,200 to $1,500 to do both seats. I think this was definitely the way to go. Now, black and white may not have been the best color choice, but this is my color scheme for my vehicle that I'm working on. That's all for this one, so we're gonna go ahead and leave it here. If this helped you out in any way, go ahead and hit that like button. It goes a long way in helping a small channel like mine. I appreciate you watching. We'll see you in the next one.